In this video, I'm going to show you the process that I use to paint pieces white. It's not a color that I use often because it can be finicky, but there are definitely some tips and tricks to ensure the perfect finish. Step 1, clean your piece. Be sure to scrub any crevices in detailing work, because if you paint over them and there's little bits of things in there, that will come up in your paint. And don't forget to rinse. I'm sanding with 80 grit sandpaper to knock down parts of the stain that started to peel up while I was cleaning, and then I'm going to go back with my bristle brush to get the sawdust out of the cracks and crevices. Because I plan to distress these pieces when I'm done painting, I'm going to go in with shellac to seal the top where I had to sand down, and then a few other places where the original finish is looking pretty rough. These are spots where if a piece is going to bleed, that's the kind of thing that's going to cause it. You can tackle this one of two ways. You can do what I'm going to do here, which is hit each spot individually that you think might bleed. Do your first coat of paint and then go back and fix anything that might bleed through with shellac over that first coat of paint. Or if you're particularly worried about it, you can just shellac your whole piece with 1 to 2 coats and then paint as normal. Especially with these redder stains, you have to be concerned about coming back and sanding with sandpaper, opening up that original finish and then still causing bleed through. So when you wet distress, it just takes away the paint and it leaves that original surface undisturbed. After I cleaned with my scrub brush, I went back with a Q-tip just to make sure I got all the dirt out of the little grooves along the bottom of the piece, and I'm glad I did, because that little bit of grime could definitely make a mess of your paint. When you're painting a piece white, it's pretty unrealistic to expect full coverage in your first coat. So really all you're looking to achieve with that is coverage for the second and possibly third coats to stick. This paint tends to dry a little bit quicker than some of the others that I worked with. So I was working in smaller spaces to get the paint on and then going back to smooth out my brush strokes as I went. Somehow I completely failed to get any footage of the distressing process, so I'm going to go ahead and describe it to you. Keep in mind that this applies to this brand of paint only. The other brands have other ways that I've found that work with them, and I will save that for a future video. But for this paint specifically, I found there are 2 ways to wet distress. The first one, you take a wet rag and set it on the area that you're wanting to work in, and then you'll just pull the paint back slowly. The other option is to spray it with a mist of warm water, let it sit for a few seconds, and then wipe it back. But I did find that going with the spray bottle option, the paint that was able to sit with the water on it for a little bit longer came off much easier, so just be mindful of that if you don't want a whole bunch of distressing. I'm using DIY white wax on these pieces. I apply with a brush. You just dip it in and get a little bit of product on there and then brush it into your paint. You don't have to use a ton of force, but you definitely want to apply a little bit of pressure and then make sure that it's on there evenly. And you'll go back in with a lint-free rag and just wipe it back. When you are done with the wiping process, you should be able to drag your finger across the surface and it will feel smooth. There won't be any catches or any rough spots. If you get any pieces or any spots that don't quite feel right, you can just go back and wipe them until it feels smooth. And here are the finished nightstands. I updated the hardware with spray paint. I will be sure to include that information in the description box below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you could take a moment to click the subscribe button, I would really appreciate your support. And you can click the notification bell so that you can be notified of future DIY and paint videos.